Hello and welcome. Welcome to Everyone's an Expert. On the internet, everyone's an expert, but I certainly am not. But luckily, when we put our heads together, we can get a pretty good picture. So, welcome to all the internet experts out there. Thanks for joining me today. And I've got a slew of things I want to talk about, but if there's something you want to talk about, feel free to add that in the chat, and I'll try to get to it. Hey, John, how's it going? I'm looking forward to tomorrow is my windshield replacement on the Model Y. We had a couple major cracks. If you've been watching the road trip videos, you may have seen some of those. The windshield took a couple weeks to get in here. It took me a couple weeks after the road trip to book the appointment, and but luckily insurance is covering it, and so that appointment's tomorrow. Really excited to have that windshield crack not right in front of my face as I drive all the time. So that's exciting. Another exciting thing is if you're in the South Metro in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, there are a whole lot of Tesla Cybertrucks at Target. I just picked up another one. They're the remote control Hot Wheels ones. And I believe in Burnsville, there were three of them, at least three of them, and I bought one. And then there was another one in the Apple Valley Target. So if you know people who are looking for those, they're down here. So check other Targets too if that's something you've been waiting for. I know for a while they were almost impossible to find, so that's pretty cool. Hey Todd, glad to see you here too. Sorry I missed out on the dinner thing last night, but just couldn't get away. I hope you guys had fun though. So I wanted to start out with the Cybertruck thing. Got me all confused. This is the third one I've bought. I gave one away, and have another one that somebody else asked me if I could grab it for them, and I haven't met up with them to hand it off to them. And then I'm debating whether or not I open this third one, because I'd like to kind of play with it, but also I don't need to. I've played with remote control cars before, but I don't know, maybe I could do a funny video or something with it. Not sure, but hey Tyler, noodles were good. Well, that's good. That's fantastic. It's always good when the noodles are good. And I hope they get your car sorted out, or will soon. If I think you were returning a loaner, so hope that all got sorted out pretty well. I wanted to start today with something that I've always said that really since last year. Let me rewind a little bit. Since last year when I went to the Fully Charged Live in Austin, Texas. Yeah, Austin. They had one of the original EV1s from GM there. And it, when I saw it in person, in the 90s, I thought it was cool. Oh, this, futuristic thing, electric cars are here. And, if you know the stats, they aren't terribly good. But they were kind of like, okay, we've got this momentum now. Things are only going to get better and accelerate from here. And seeing it in person last year really kind of hit home about, it was a decent little car and could have been the start of something fantastic for GM. And at the time, in those videos, it's in the Frunk Full of Diapers series, at the time I had said, man, just imagine if GM had continued working, even in the background, on, battery technology, on, developing an EV, how far ahead they'd be. They'd be far ahead of Tesla, and I even said in that video, and it could be true, that Tesla maybe wouldn't have ever, had a chance to get off the ground because GM would have, sucked all the oxygen out of the EV market, and all the big players would then be following faster to keep up. So that's always been my thought about it. And then Ian Pavelko, who's Mad Hungarian on Twitter, I think, or I can't remember where. I think on the forums he's Mad Hungarian. Um, he's part of the Tesla Owners Online podcast. Really super knowledgeable guy about wheels and tires and all that stuff. Uh, and he posted or retweeted a post. I can't remember if it was a thread or an article by someone who was working at GM at the time in that EV1 program. And it was kind of like his takedown of like the who killed the electric car narrative that, GM did. Basically he's saying GM did everything they could, and for liability reasons they had to destroy him at the end. And it was really the fact that the California Air Resource Board jumped the gun. They got so excited by the prototype of the EV1 that they put these regulations in place that no one could hit. So he was like, well, they just decided we were further along than we really were. And there's probably some truth to that. People get a little gung-ho, I know even I do, on some of this technology stuff. Excuse me. But as I'm reading this, I'm listening or, understanding his points of, they put a lot of money in this, a lot of development time. And when it finished, or, as I got to the end, I didn't, there's something that still bugged me about it, and I couldn't put my finger on it at first. And basically, his contention, and I get it, he was there and, he probably put a lot of time and effort into trying to make it work. So I don't necessarily, I'm not trying to come after this guy, which is why I'm not bringing up the article and, naming him by name. But the contention was that basically GM did everything they could. There's no way they could have got that program off the ground, and they didn't have any choice but to discontinue it. And then I'm thinking back to kind of when that was. And, well, it speaks to a couple things. But first of all, I'll say, kind of when that was. That was about the time when JB was going around trying to get people to, buy into his ideas about electric vehicles, JB Straubel. And when he met with Elon, to try to get funding to, do an electric car. I don't know the story verbatim, entirely, but basically it's around that kind of vintage when GM was, buying back and crushing all these vehicles. And that's kind of what hit me, is that here you have this guy, JB, brilliant mind, who's trying to get attention. I think he did. Again, this is really hazy, so I'm not sure if I'm right on this, but correct me if I'm wrong. But I think he did go to other automakers and try to pitch this before going the startup route. With the guys who originally founded Tesla, and then, getting, or maybe he got Elon interested, and then they found the guys who started Tesla. Again, it's all a little fuzzy right now, but regardless, he had the imagination. And when I thought back to this article from a GM person, it really struck me that the major thing they didn't have going for them was the imagination of how they could make it go forward. They hit roadblocks and said, there's nothing we can do. And again, maybe there's some, I'm sure there were financing issues and things, but it just struck me that, our suppliers couldn't do this, or, this limitation. And as I'm watching, SpaceX build these massive rockets out in the desert, in the open, and, Tesla run through all the challenges they've had. And I'll kind of come back to this a little bit later, but, it's having the imagination of when you get to a limitation, how do we get past this? Then what's the next step? And even if all the EV1s had to be brought back and scrapped, and, that just had to be the way it was, the fact that they didn't consider, do we partner with a battery company, which Tesla did with Panasonic, or 3M. There was something about 3M was developing a battery technology or something they were working with. So, excuse me. So it kind of just struck me as a complete lack of imagination, that when they came to these hurdles, there didn't seem to be a how can we solve it. It was there's nothing out there, therefore it's not ready. And so unless somebody comes to us with a battery on a silver platter, we're not even going to look into it, because that's not what we do. So a lack of imagination on how they could solve things, and a lack of openness of, investigating things a little out of their wheelhouse. And again, I'm sure there were managers and, executives just saying, shut this down, this isn't a moneymaker. So that was kind of my big takeaway from that, of, kind of the attitude of, it's not our problem. Like, if this stuff isn't ready, it's not our problem. It's not our responsibility or in our interest to try and solve that problem. Even though, if you look at, the market share they could have right now and where EVs would be right now, if they would have found somebody like JB and said, all right, here's a team of 50 people, see what you can do. And maybe that wouldn't have worked at GM. I don't know. But, it just really struck me as here's this guy, 20 years later, still saying we did everything we could, without the introspection of, maybe there's something more we could have done. It's hard to see that in yourself. I'm sure I don't see that in a lot of things in my life, so I totally get it. Like I said, I'm not trying to bash this guy, but the article was very convincing until I started reflecting on some of these other things. So I wanted to bring it up. I don't know if anybody else saw that, but Ian Pavelko on Twitter posted it a couple days ago, and it was interesting. Yeah, motor technology probably needed to advance a little bit too. Yeah, and they were using lead acid batteries, but that's where I'm saying, like, they knew that wasn't really sustainable into the future. Lithium ion was just starting to, I think maybe that's what they were working on, or lithium something with 3M, but it was expensive or not ready for prime time. And that's where, like I said, even if they had scrapped that program but said, okay, in 2 years this will be ready for prime time, let's start designing from the ground up with what we learned from the EV1 and see if we can make something really special, and then be ahead of everyone. And then had they done that, they also would have gained all the market share for the people who were snatching up, and myself included, snatching up Priuses or the Honda Insights. A lot of people who, some of those early vehicles were not the prettiest, but, a lot of those people did it for the environmental reasons. And if GM would have had a viable EV, mass, and able to produce it at scale, not just compliance cars, I think they could have done really amazingly well with it. Like I said, the technology would be 10 years further along than it is right now. So anyway, that's my soapbox moment for right now. But I just thought it was really interesting. And Elon just did an interview with Tim Dodd, the everyday astronaut, who's got a really good channel explaining, big space concepts, so people like me can kind of pretend to understand it. And in that interview, Elon talks about some of the struggles with the Model 3 ramp, and, kind of why things were a certain way. And, just the cultural differences of what they do at SpaceX, and I'm assuming Tesla as well, that other companies just don't have the culture, or have maybe too much middle management for, or what, but that ability of just, hey, that didn't work, but it's a leaping off point for this, and that attitude. So if you haven't seen that one, I think it's going to be a 3-part series on Tim Dodd's YouTube channel. There's a ton of background noise because they're recording at Starbase with all the construction of the Super Heavy booster going on around them. So it's there's a lot of background noise. But what Elon is talking about in a lot of cases is fascinating. To me, I described it to my wife, and she said, well, that's what engineers are supposed to do. I'm like, yeah, but it sounds different than I've ever heard it before, or I'm probably not explaining it the way Elon did. And then also, there's one thing of that's what engineers are supposed to do, and then there's actually doing it in practice in a company with a structure, in a corporate structure with massive risk avoidance, for the sake of their own, for the sake of keeping your jobs. I think it's just a different world, but that's just, maybe it's super dry in here. I don't know why I keep doing that. Sorry about that. I'm trying to get things on the mute button when I can. But anyway, check out that interview if you haven't yet. I found it super interesting, and I'm looking forward to the next couple parts. And then kind of tagging onto the Elon interview. Elon's been posting. If you're not on Twitter, I totally understand why. If you are, it's better than Facebook, but it's still, has its dark corners. But if you're on Twitter and not following Elon, I think it's probably a mistake if you want to get new, fresh news or amazing pictures. Of today, he was posting pictures, and other people do too, but of that Super Heavy booster he was, they were talking next to as they were doing the interview. That's now being lifted onto the launch stand, and it's just so massive. And obviously, he can walk right up to wherever he wants to, so he gets amazing pictures of what's going on. So very cool to see some of that stuff, and just the pace that they keep. They talk a little bit about how they do that. Like I was saying, it might be what engineers are supposed to do, but they're doing it in practice, and just so many people working around them. I just thought it was really amazing. Of course, that didn't start until I hit record. Of course, that's the way things go. So definitely, if you're on Twitter, follow Elon, and you probably are already, but you'll get to see cool behind the scenes stuff that no one else could share. Apparently, Rocket Lab did a tour of their facilities too. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I think that's a 10-minute tour of what they're doing. And they seem like a cool little company too. I guess I had things in different order, and then I saw some tweets about tomorrow. Apparently, President Biden is meeting with executives from Ford, GM, and Chrysler, Stellantis. I'm not sure who's going to be there from where, but and apparently the wind I had gotten was that everything's going. Those three automakers are going to be pledging to go 40% electric by 2030. And of course, Elon wasn't invited, or a representative from Tesla. It doesn't seem like they were invited. That could be a union thing. It could be, they don't seem that big, but even though they're the leader in the EV space, somebody said, that's going to be a huge elephant in the room, and I think that's right. Other people have pointed out, my wife included, that well, they don't sell gas cars, so there's no point in them being there about meeting a target for, lowering gas car sales. And it kind of makes some sense, but it's also like, well, they wouldn't be doing it without the guy they're not inviting. So, seems a little weird to me. But I was thinking about that, and then just before I came on, about an hour ago, Rob Maurer posted the Tesla Daily, and he was kind of going over some of that too. And he pointed out that it sounds like the pledge is going to be between 40 and 50% electric vehicles, but they're also lumping in hybrids and fuel cells into that 40 or 50 mix. So basically they're doing absolutely nothing. They're pledging to do nothing more than what they're going to be doing already. And they're probably going to have to move faster to stay alive, in my opinion. I don't, most people watching this, I imagine, have at least ridden in an EV or experienced one in some way. And there are a lot of naysayers and a lot of people who are hesitant until they get their butts in the seats, get launched, or see how big and how much of just a regular vehicle it is. People think it's going to be harder to change than it is. And once your neighbors have one, once you can start seeing them around. Somebody posted on the Minnesota Tesla owners group just a short time ago about how many Teslas they're seeing in the metro area now in Minnesota. And yeah, me too. Even when I'm driving out of the metro area, I'm passing or being passed by, several Teslas on just a short trip. So, that number is expanding, I think, a lot faster than people expect. So, the Mach-E seems to be doing well. They're probably, I imagine, selling every one they can, every one they can produce. And I have to imagine once, the Lightning comes out, that's going to be the same way. Ford's going to be, um, that direction should be pretty clear pretty quickly. So, as good as it is that they're, it's kind of like the Minnesota Clean Cars thing, where it's good that people are getting up in front and saying, "Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to try to meet this target." But I think these targets, other than a good signal, are not understanding how fast things are going to change, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm not sure. It's going to be a good PR thing, and it's going to, it's driving Tesla people crazy because Elon's not there, and I get that. And I'm kind of in that boat. But also, any move in that direction is a good move. Unless there's some, crazy, terrible background deal or something. But if, I guess if you can look at it at the flip side, if you wanted to say the bad side is the, like, committing to still selling 60% of your vehicles as gas powered is a pretty terrible target. So even 50% by 2030, that sounds like insanely slow to me, but we'll have to see. Obviously there's going to be, battery constraints. How many can they make? How many can they produce? How many vehicles can they produce? Where are they going to produce them? Retooling factories, all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be interesting. I will watch the announcement, and I hope it's good. I hope that there's some stuff about how the infrastructure is going to grow. I hope the companies push each other. But kind of like with the EV1 story I started out with, I don't know if they have that unless they see a big risk. And right now, the big risk to them is Tesla. So in order to push them faster and the industry faster, Tesla needs to execute even more. So I guess that's good. That's a good kind of pressure to have. Let's hope they can do it. Let's see. I'm going to check the chat before I switch topics here. Yeah, the too rich to own a Tesla is there was another thing going around on Twitter about that today too. Yes, I think they'll be eligible to get money or some sort of support or write-off to put in more superchargers if they open it up to everybody. I think that's kind of the catch in the language, or that's what's been discussed at least. Yeah, Todd, you hit the nail on the head there. It's spending wisely and saving. when we bought our uh, 2019 model, or in 2018, when we bought our 2015 Model S, that was a big stretch for us. That was by far the most expensive car we've ever bought. But, um, it had free supercharging. We put a ton of miles on it, weren't spending money on gas. That went pretty well. We traded that in, unfortunately, before these ridiculous used car prices that we have now. But traded that in March, and then again kind of stretched from where we were at that point to get the Model Y. But it's kind of priorities. It's also not understanding that most people who can't afford an EV can't afford a new car of any kind. Those people always buy used, which is why even after all new vehicles are EVs, there's still going to be a long tail of getting rid of all the combustion engine vehicles. But we never, like, the Model Y is our first new car we've bought, and we've had relative success in life with jobs and things, but we don't spend a ton going out, and we don't waste a lot of money. So it's a matter of kind of where your priorities are, and maybe you can't afford a Model S Plaid, but you can afford a used Nissan Leaf, and that'll get you 90% of your driving. So, there's just there's some weird perceptions. I guess it's good that Tesla's built a brand that, like I was saying a couple weeks ago about the woman I know who got a Model 3. She wanted a Model 3 because it was a Tesla. She didn't want a Ford because she wanted to say, she's in a Tesla. So there's an upside to having that kind of brand cachet, but people thinking you're rich all the time is not great. Yeah, just the cost savings in fuel are huge, and they add up. And that's really the unfortunate trap. Excuse me, I'm going to do a little peep show here. That's the unfortunate trap of getting in the cycle of buying the cheapest used car you can, and then it needs extra maintenance. Stuff is breaking on it all the time, and then you need then that car craps out, you need to buy another one. And so you get on this cycle, and I was there for a long time before we bought our Prius, which was, it had been a rental car that we got after that life for it was over. But at that time, that was the newest car we had. But because it was in good shape, we didn't have to put a bunch of money into it, and that helped us save, for the future. So it's really expensive to be poor and have to go through those cycles. And yeah, gas is, the same price as it is for everyone, but your car is generally less efficient and not running as well. So, it's a tough spot to be in. Somebody who runs another channel, I've talked about before, but doesn't really matter who it is right now. But made a post of again on Twitter of stop assuming everyone can afford a Tesla. And there are some people who afford who just get a Tesla, just get a Tesla. And that can be super annoying, but it's also you know, like, stop assuming that the person who buys a $50,000, you know, SUV of another brand can't do that same thing with an EV. Or, the person who owns a $80,000 work truck can't do that with the EV version. Um, so a lot of people can't, but those people aren't buying new cars generally. And the people who can buy those other, higher end, you like the luxury SUVs and things like that with all the trimmings and all the extra packages. Those people, and there are plenty of them on the road, those people can afford a Tesla. Or a Mach-E, or a Aria, or I don't think the Aria is even that expensive. And the Kona's not that expensive. So, I mean, again, if your budget is $5,000, everything's expensive. If your budget's $1,000, which has been the case for me in the past, everything's expensive. Every used piece of crap that's held together with chicken wire is expensive. So I get it, but there's also planning and saving and lifestyle choices that can help you. Doesn't mean it's easy for everyone or it's going to work for everybody. But like I said, the people buying the really expensive trucks and SUVs, those people can afford to switch over, and that would make a huge difference. So let's see, where do we want to go next? I rambled on those things longer than I expected to. I guess let's go to AI Day. If you saw the thumbnail, I put the snake charger from 2015, 2016 on there. Because the AI Day invites have started going out. And there's somebody who's head of a robotics lab at a university was tweeting some things out, and kind of teasing that there might be some robotics surprises. And so everything from sex robots to Terminators, people went right there, obviously, because that's how people are. But I started thinking about, why would Tesla, what would be the use case for Tesla? And then I thought back to the snake charger. And right after I made that note, I watched a Dave Lee video where he's like, remember the snake charger? I'm like, oh man, I was going to say that. That was my original idea. And apparently it was his original idea too. But my thought was to do a robotaxi fleet. You either need a person at the charging station, or you need some kind of mechanism that's going to be able to find the charge ports, plug in the vehicles, monitor all that. So I thought back to the snake charger, and maybe it's something that's maybe a little more mobile, and maybe more durable, and can deal with either a tight spot or something not lining up optimally, that it would be able to swivel or pivot. And they might announce something like that, I don't know, but it'll be really interesting to see what they come up with. But then again, this afternoon I saw a tweet by that same guy, who's and he was like arriving at Starbase in Texas. So that got me thinking, well, what is SpaceX using AI driven robots for, or what do they want to? Again, I think in Rob Maurer's podcast, Tesla Daily, he pointed out that there's a job opening for somebody on a robotics team, and it seems like most of what they would be doing is working with manufacturing robots, so probably not a public-facing entity or product, but it's interesting, and I was well, I guess I'm more curious on AI Day to learn what the rate of progress can be expected for full self-driving. That's kind of the big focus for me. Be more wow factor if there's robots doing crazy stuff, but if they do, I think there'll probably be more manufacturing robots, or like I said, maybe an update to that snake charger kind of thing. But it should be interesting. It sounds like they're going to make it fun. But I also don't know anything about computer chips. So when I saw that posted yesterday, I'm going to hold this up and no one's going to be able to see it. But I can view the post. Not good video work here. I should have had this on a video on the screen. But basically, the Dennis Hong is apparently the guy's name. He was posting about it and showed a picture that's on the cover, or on the AI Day invite, which of course I won't be invited to. But that's, I shouldn't be invited to that. I don't know what they're talking about. But then somebody asked, James Duma if he knew what it was, and he kind of gave his take on what he thought it looked like. So I reposted that on my Facebook feed, and I got 3 really interesting responses. One from a friend of mine from high school who really doesn't follow anything Tesla related. And then Brian Anderson, who's in the Minnesota Tesla Owners Group, and follows Tesla very closely. And so he was kind of answering questions back and forth. And then my friend back in my theater days, Forrest, and Forrest has been working for Cray supercomputers for almost 20 years, 15, 20 years now, and he's got several patents under his name. He is a very, very smart guy. So I had tagged him to kind of get his take, and just saying, does this, like, to me, this photo looks really cool, but I don't know if that's just a typical industry thing and they're just showing a chip, and what their big takeaway will be software or something. So Brian was kind of Brian Anderson was kind of explaining, more technical terms than I can. Kind of what we're looking at here. Kind of explaining some of the things to Forrest, because Forrest also doesn't follow Tesla super closely, but he obviously understands the technology part of it. Uh, so there was kind of a good back and forth of like, Forrest is saying, well, like, um, it could be a neural net processor or something. Um, but the packaging looks pretty standard for high powered ASICs, and we use something similar. So it's like, okay, so this is kind of a standard piece of hardware. Maybe Tesla's using a different way. And Brian pointed out that this is going to go into Dojo, which is the supercomputer training the neural nets for full self driving. Forrest is like, no, supercomputers do not fit in a car. They couldn't even fit in the Tesla Semi. He was, thinking this was going to go into a vehicle. And then Brian, posted that, no, this is going to be in a warehouse or, facility that's just the computer. The cars are the nodes feeding it. And then Dojo is just gathering all this information and running whatever AI does on it. So once they kind of got sorted out, and so Forrest said, oh, right, I forgot they were building a central system. I had read that a while ago. I was thinking this would go into the car. He said, it's definitely interesting that they're building such a large system purely for AI. The systems we're doing are all general purpose, and I'd venture a guess that this will be the fastest AI system on the planet. It probably actually won't be listed on the fastest computers list, since the top 500 is all about double precision floating point performance, which I doubt Tesla needs. HPL. HPL is a very specific and not really useful benchmark. So what he's saying there, in my terrible reading of it, is that basically they're building a supercomputer, but instead of running everything through it like Cray would or someone else would, they're just doing it for AI and neural net training, which means it will be the fastest in the world at that. It will probably be the fastest in the world at doing that. So to me, that gave me a couple things to listen for on Battery Day, because I do not pretend to understand that stuff really at all. I'm not a computer expert for sure. Yeah, Jason, large data processing for teaching AI is kind of what Dojo is all about. So, but I kind of wanted to put it in front of, get this event on Forrest's radar, because he is working with supercomputers, and like I said, has patents in that stuff. He knows what he's talking about. So, I would guess he probably doesn't have time, but I would love to watch AI Day with him or a couple other people who are in that space, know that stuff really well, and just kind of have them give their live commentary, because to me it's all going to sound like, ooh, that's cool, that's shiny, that's, but kind of from his standpoint, he said, unless they're doing this or that, the design of what they're doing isn't that novel. But what they're doing with it and what they could be running on it is going to be the special part. So, yeah, I'd love to. I'll see if I can work something out. But love to get somebody like that's take on what we're actually seeing, is it a big deal? Is it just a big deal because a car company's doing it? Or is it really like high level supercomputer, supercomputing? Um, so just found that fascinating. Um, and then on the other end of the spectrum, I have my another friend from high school who, again, doesn't follow Tesla really at all. I'm sure, other than seeing my posts, probably really annoyed that they're all this stuff. Um, but um, he is currently like a welder in a facility, and they have an AI robot, that brings goods or things through the warehouse. And he was talking about how it always needs to be restarted. And Brian was saying, well, this is a different animal, but stuff goes wrong with technology. And he was saying, like, what if this happens with a car where it's just stuck sitting there and causing a traffic jam? Obviously, that wouldn't be good. Um, and the difference is, a fully autonomous thing, at that stage, doing probably a pre-mapped route, you know, is different than an AI based, and that's probably following nodes or something through the warehouse, not making decisions on its own. But at least in the beta phase, there's always going to be a driver who, if people are paying attention, should be able to take care of any issues that come up. So it'll be interesting, but he also pointed out that, um, yeah, and I think we all know this is coming. If someone gets killed by this technology, the outrage, even if it's way safer than a person, those first couple fatalities will obviously be tragic, but probably way less than a human driver would do. But there's going to be a lot of pushback because we're so used to auto accidents, and people, someone dies in an auto accident, it's tragic, but for the most part, people kind of go, well, that's just what happens. Car accidents happen. Um, so we've kind of understood that that's a normal thing that happens, where if it happens and a person wasn't behind the wheel, it's going to seem like a much bigger deal. Um, he was like, people people will revolt about this. Like, yeah, it's gonna be a tough transition, but I think there'll be safety drivers for a while. And obviously, with this kind of technology, and him being a welder, there's the concern about job loss for drivers, and if it can do this, it can probably weld. So that's a concern, for jobs. But that's a broader political. Once this stuff happens, what are we going to do with people? Retraining. Are they? That's another can of worms I'm not going to get into tonight. But it's this little step, which depending on what they announce on the 18th, and depending on what the robots do, it could be a big step. And again, like, people not expecting electric cars to jump on as fast as they have been and seem to be accelerating. People don't expect that these massive changes are right around the corner, and some policies are going to be need to be made, just to try to handle how we're going to make that a smooth transition for people. Obviously, I don't want anyone to lose their job, but there are, through the evolution of technology, different industries have gone by the wayside. So, if it's a gradual enough curve, hopefully people can find a way through it. I'm just going to catch up here. Hey, Roland. Oh, you missed a lot. Can't recap it for you. Sorry. Just me being an expert sitting here pontificating as if I know what I'm talking about. Decent job of it. Yeah, the first AI day with the autonomy day. Is that what they called it? I think that's what they called it. Yeah, I thought that was a really good. As much as I could follow, a good primer on what their plans were. But that was 2 years ago now. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what's changed, what they've been able to implement, and going away from radar, how they're feeling about that transition. Yeah, I can learn the wrong solution if not set up correctly. AI is not 100% human free. Has to be guided to a solution. Yeah, and I think that was, Jason, to your point, that was kind of my comment to Brian, is that there's going to be safety drivers for a while. Even when the cars are, even if we get to the point of robo-taxis in the next 5 years or whatever, there's going to be some sort of controls, either for help or for controlling the car via the touchscreen. So a person getting a ride, if it gets confused, if it's just completely sunk, there's going to be some way to control it. And I'm wondering if Smart Shift and the Model S's is the first iteration of that, the first baby step toward getting people used to, changing, forward and reverse on the screen. And then, see how that develops and how people's habits develop from there. But anyway, really looking, the more I hear about AI Day and the more I think about it, how it could be applied to Tesla, not just the Snake Charger, not just FSD, but then if the guy's showing up to SpaceX, I'm guessing he's not going to the south tip of Texas just to have a meeting with Elon he could have had over Zoom or something. I'm guessing he's probably doing something, or they have plans to do something with SpaceX too, which would be, hopefully that's discussed too, to just kind of show the broad applications of what they're doing. So I'm excited for it. I think it'll be cool, but it's a little ways away, so we got to wait. And I'm sure, like all Tesla events, the hype is going to build, and people are going to be expecting all these things. And then, like Elon said, it's mostly a recruiting event. So when it turns out to be mostly a recruiting event, I'm sure the stock will go down and people grumble. But, it's fun to guess how they could be using this new technology. Or, maybe not new technology, but their new ability to to process the data. Um, so I wanted to share. Yeah, we talked about some. Okay, I got a bunch of chicken scratch notes because as I was doing the prep for this, ideas kept coming. I'm like, no, I want to put that there. No, I want to put that there. Um, so coming up to Sunday should be, if I ever get to editing it, Sunday should be the final part of our road trip with some takeaways and fun stuff there. I think I need to lean this way. And so I just wanted to share kind of the first stage of the spreadsheet I made of all the stats and stuff. I'll go into more detail and stuff like this in the episode, but where am I? Here I am. Hi, I'm in this box. So I broke things out by like the state where we left from, how much travel time we did, how many miles in those trips, our water hour per mile if I recorded it, and then kind of the total miles through the day. Our arrival location, elevation, because to me that was like the most fascinating thing, is like how high are we going up and down. And northern Montana is not nearly as high. In my mind, the Rockies get taller and taller as you go north, but that's not the case, at least the areas where we were, where Colorado was far higher than Montana and Wyoming as well. And then departure state of charge, arrival state of charge, charge used, charge time, charge gain in that time, then what we left the charger with, and then our costs. So what I thought was, again, going back to that elevation thing, is like 2 miles and 719 feet of change from our lowest point, which I think was Fargo, to our highest point at the top of Rocky Mountain National Park. So I thought that was fun. Don't know if anybody else cares about that. You can see I have a little bit of caveat on some of those numbers on the little key at the bottom, where those kind of reddish purple elements are just a wild guess, because I didn't record anything at that point. So I'll be going over some of this stuff and some takeaways. My wife is really into data and spreadsheets, so I sent a copy of this to her and said, what do you find most interesting out of these things, and see if she comes up with any insights or anything. The gray to white are different days. Top speeds on the trip. Well, I know I probably hit triple digits passing somebody, but generally I would say 85 was probably the top speed we did. Obviously in the park and stuff like that, we're doing slower speeds, and we had a very loaded down car. But I also, one of the big things I noticed, I'm going to see if I can pause it when we get down to the bottom here. I just have this little screen recording I did looping. There we are. So one of the things that really was higher than I expected was the arrival state of charge. I thought we were being pretty good about, staying in the low range. But my average arrival state of charge was 31%. Now, one of those was 65% because we came down out of the mountain and then charged up for the next day. So I bet that would come down to about 20%, maybe, if I took that 65 out. Maybe not that far, 25%. But in most cases, the Model Y was able to go further than I was willing to chance it, and I'd get to a supercharger and go, why did I spend so much time at that last one? And then I'd spend that much time at the next one again. So, that kind of has a trickle-down effect of, arriving with such a high state of charge when I didn't need to. My departure state of charge average probably could have been a bit lower. And then, most of the time my charge used was around 55%. So again, the average charge time was 31 minutes. Well, I probably could have shaved at least 5 or 6 off of that and made it 25, maybe even more. So I need to dig into this more and come to some conclusions, but I thought it was interesting to share a little bit here on the live stream. And then, like I said, I will more on the actual episode on Sunday. And then I might, I'll see if I can find a place to post this if people want to download it as a PDF and play with it and see what conclusions they draw from it. But regardless, I thought it was kind of interesting, and some of it I left out. If I can back the video up here, if we go up, there are some gaps here you can kind of see in that middle gray area. When I was at one location and level 2 charging, there wasn't much stats to gather. So when I did the averages, I cut out fields that were either not applicable or the average charge time. I didn't include things like level 2 charging, because that would obviously skew it and make it seem like, oh man, you had so much charge time. And when I was level 2 charging at the destination chargers in Rock Springs, Wyoming, I didn't want to charge too fast and be sitting at 100 overnight. So in cases like that, I'd tone down the amperage to make it take all night, so I didn't have to come and get it off in the middle of the night. So anyway, but that's there, and like I said, I'll be sharing it in more detail with probably some more eloquent conclusions on Sunday's episode. So look for that. How many people raced me on the trip? Not many. People did that. I think people do that more on the Model S. When I went out there in the Model S, I got a lot more attention. The Model Y looks a little more like a regular SUV, so I don't remember anybody really challenging us. When you do the trip to Duluth, yeah, I bet that can be a fast run up 35 to Duluth. I used to do that in my old Honda Civic. I think it was a 93 Honda Civic or 89 Honda Civic. Beige. It was terrible. I mean, it was wonderful, hatchback, but it was also pretty terrible. It's one of those things you look back at and you're like, how did I survive driving in that thing? Um, and I took it on a couple of cross country road trips too, so it did some work. And then I blew the engine out. Um, would I consider a roof rack? I'd consider it. My wife's got a kayak, and once the Prius dies, we've been hauling it around on a roof rack on the Prius. So once the Prius dies, we'll probably have to do a roof rack for that. Um, I don't think we need it for just our family travel. It's just the three of us, and even with my brother and all his gear and some of the extra stupid things we brought, like we brought a bunch of sleeping bags just in case we'd need them. We were in hotels every night, so maybe one for my daughter, but she had a blanket too, so there was no reason to bring those. They just ate up space, and you can smash them down, but they're built to be fluffy. Um, so I think in the Y, I like I said, until we have a need, like we're hauling the kayak somewhere, I don't think we'll get a roof rack. Yeah, I bet they do. I think they have the airplanes out here by my house during the day too, because the same plane does kind of a loop around on this. I suppose, in Burnsville, you're just coming out of the metro, coming up the hill, and then people hammer it getting out of town. Um, but yeah, the roof rack. Our efficiency. Just looking back at that spreadsheet, our average watt hour per mile was 316. So I would say with a loaded car, all that elevation change, the high speeds, uh, that's pretty good. When we did our Frunk Full of Diapers road trip in the Model S, I think we got back and our average watt hour per mile was 425. And it was a much colder time of year. That was in February, maybe the end of January to February. I'd have to go back and look at the dates, but that was colder. But also the 2015 85D wasn't as efficient as the Model Y by any stretch of the imagination. Looks like our worst watt hour per mile was 393, and the best was 145. And that 145 was pretty much just coming out of the mountains. So obviously pretty easy to hit that. Um, but yeah, it was. I kept being, like I said, being surprised at how capable and how much range the Model Y has. Because when you're jumping from charger to charger, and you guys probably all know this, but I'll say it anyway. Your range is only as far as your space between chargers. Unless you have enough to skip some, which we did across Nebraska, and that'll again be in Sunday's episode. So there are enough chargers across Nebraska that we could skip one. We alternate. And that's kind of nice where you can use more of your range, get more, road underneath you. And then it's a game of, pick the stops you want to be at. And maybe I would have shifted those. Some of them in Nebraska weren't super. I mean, they were fine, but I probably should have spent more time looking at the supercharger reviews on Now You Know's channel to see which ones we want to hit. But by that point in the trip, I was so on autopilot that it was just like, wherever you want to go, Tesla, that's what we're going to do. And I'm not putting any more thought into it. I'm ready to drive home. So, yeah, pretty much just took the Tesla suggestions all the way through Nebraska. Yeah, I1 Tesla has a roof rack with a tent on top. Yeah, they had a pretty crazy adventure. I don't know if more episodes are coming out on that. I know they went all through Moab and did a lot of cool things, but I thought there was more to their adventure. And they actually just rebranded. They are no longer I1 Tesla. Now it's Brian's. What is it called? It's Brian's EV. It's not Journey. I think it's a C word. I can't remember what it is. But yeah, I saw that come up in my subscription feed, and I'm like, "Who is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's Brian from I1 Tesla, but it's not I1 Tesla anymore." Yeah, I saw that too. The guy dent his car. I can't remember who it was, but the so the reason I1 Tesla rebranded is because his wife Karen just got a Audi e-tron Sportback, and I think that looks like I think the lines of that car look really sharp. I think it's pretty cool looking. But then, as he was showing around different parts of the vehicle, he was showing the front where the cameras are, and maybe there's a radar in there too. There's two big bulbous things, and then there's something in the center. That sounds bad. Anyway, I'm on a roll tonight. But anyway, I was like, that's pretty hideous, and it's pretty low down to the ground. Most people, it's not a defining feature of the car, but it's way bigger than what I expected. And it reminded me of, I'm assuming, not to get too nerdy on an EV live stream. In Empire Strikes Back, the Imperial probe droid that pops up in the snow and Chewbacca blasts it. Or maybe Chewbacca distracts it and Han blasts it. But anyway, it's got those big cameras on it, and that's what that front or lower grille of the Audi e-tron Sportback looked like to me. It'll be interesting to see one of those in person, because I hope it's not as distracting as it was on camera. But again, interesting. We'll see how that. Yeah, I think they got sick of waiting for the X. I think that's unfortunately going to happen with a lot of people. We're hoping to have their X in January, and now it looks like it might be December or next January, which is unfortunate. But like so many of these things, it's like you want them to get them right, and you want to not have any issues when they do come out. So taking a little extra time might be good, but at the same time, I also feel like maybe Tesla isn't feeling as much pressure as they expected to be. So maybe they are taking those extra steps, hopefully to, taking that time to improve things. People gripe about the build quality, but I think there was a major concern that, like, a Lucid or somebody was going to launch last year, or like the F-150 Lightning would be revealed and, produced this year. And, I'm guessing, again, with the S and X and then the Cybertruck too, I wonder if they saw Rivian's what's that word? Timeline. As they saw Rivian's timeline slip, as they saw Lucid's timeline slip. And I know everybody's dealing with, part shortages and everything, but I'm wondering if that kind of gave them a little breathing room of, like, the people we're expecting to compete with us directly aren't ready yet, so we can take a little more time. And maybe, put more of the batteries and chips and things into the more profitable 3 and Y, at least at this point. I have no insider information on that. It's just something I think may have been, like last year they kind of when Nikola was getting a lot of hype. And that's a whole other boondoggle I'm not going to get into. But when Nikola was getting a lot of hype, that's when Elon tweeted out, all right, it's time to start, ramping up the Semi, to kind of bring that focus back to them. And I think there again, there was the intention of, okay, if people are going to come after us in this market, we need to be producing. As these promises aren't happening, it gives them a little leeway. But of course, the narrative is Tesla's always behind and no one else is. Everyone else is just, like it's perfectly okay Rivian's behind, and it's perfectly okay that Lucid is behind. And, that's kind of what you get for being out in front, but it gets a little frustrating. But it will be I think we're in August now. I think the next 6 to 8 months are going to be just bonkers when Austin comes in line, when Berlin comes online, when Rivian starts delivering, maybe Lucid starts delivering. When all this stuff starts popping up, it's going to be some pretty crazy news cycles, I think. It'll be pretty fun to watch. So I'm excited for that. And competition can only make Tesla better, so that's good. One thing I wanted to ask is, sorry, this is kind of a left-hand turn here. I should have had full self-driving to help me navigate it. I wanted to ask if I may have asked this before, but if you guys used like third-party apps for like monitoring your car. I used Tesla App for a long time, and it's still on my phone, but since I've got the Model Y, I've checked it maybe twice. And on the road trip, that's something I really wanted to follow up with. I was like, yeah, I'm going to, be in the app all the time, and I'm going to be, reviewing the superchargers in there, and really making an effort to drill down on the data side of things. And it was never convenient or really in my mind in the moment. And I don't know if that stuff is super valuable to people once they've owned their car for a long time. With my Model S, I was really into it for a long time. And then I've got a friend, another guy who's on YouTube, Brandon from, what is his channel name? EV. I can't remember what it is. But he actually just got a job at ChargeWay. And ChargeWay is one of those apps that I think it does route planning. It's kind of like a PlugShare, Better Route Planner kind of thing. But it has a whole system of ranking chargers with a color code and a number. And so when you buy your car, the idea is that, okay, your Chevy Bolt can charge at any of this color or this number. And the numbers, as they escalate, are how fast it charges, and then the color is, means something else. And so I downloaded that app actually months ago now. And then Brandon just got Everyday EV is the name of his channel. I think that they've got a ID4 and a Bolt, or they had a Bolt and traded it in for the ID4. I can't remember, but anyway, he just got this job at ChargeWay, and I was like, oh yeah, I have that app, but I've never done it. Like I've opened it and went, oh yeah, that's an app. And have never taken it any further. Again, it's one of those that I thought, well, on the road trip, I'm going to take the time and I'm going to, explore this and, try to understand it. And I think it's great because you want EV owners getting to this point where you don't really think much about it. You do some general preparedness things, but you just drive wherever you're going and you do your things and you enjoy your life. And so that's great. More, as EV adoption picks up, that's where we want the average person to get. But I also feel like, am I missing out on not using some of these tools? So if there's a great tool you guys use, let me know in the chat or the comments. And if you're kind of in the same boat where you downloaded all the apps at first and then now they just don't really even factor into your life, just in even PlugShare, which is really handy, I only used a couple times planning the trip and never actually when we were on the trip, just to find out, oh, there's a charger here or a charger there, get a little information on it. But then when we were on the trip, I don't think I even opened it. So just interesting. Tim, yeah, Teslafy, I think a lot of people really like that one. Hi, by the way. But and that one's got a lot of like battery information, I think, in it. Again, that's one I haven't used before, but do you find yourself using it fairly frequently and paying a lot of attention to it? Or is it just something good in the background that keeps a monitor on how things are going, and you check out your battery health every so often? Or is it more interactive, like maybe not daily, but like weekly use kind of thing? I'm just wondering how other people, do how other people who have had an EV for a long time are using their apps, or if they just kind of go by the wayside over time. But maybe I need to try Teslafy out. Maybe I should do a big like rundown of all the major apps. Um, I think it's also easier to do that stuff when you're traveling alone. Um, it was more fun to have my family with me, have my brother and my daughter with me. But the stops were far more chaotic than when, it's just me driving out to Montana and I can sit for 10, 15 minutes in the car on social media, or, checking things in the apps, you know, doing little review surveys of places. Yeah, battery temperature. I know, I think Brandon and like Kyle Connor are all about maximizing the battery temperature, um, and you do have to plug into the bus for that. But um, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not a stats guy, and that stuff, after a certain point, doesn't. I feel like if in general, if I'm getting to a supercharger and navigating there, if the battery needs to be warmer, it'll do the battery preconditioning if I've got enough juice. Um, so I don't really feel a need to manually check it. Um, but maybe I could. Maybe that's something maybe that's my next level, my next journey. Road trip stats. Yeah, that's the thing where I'm like, had I been more cognizant of what I was doing in the Tesla app, I would have more of these fields in. I'll bring that back up. You can see here some of these fields are blank that I would have been able to fill in of, watt hours per mile, or, the trip miles on some of that stuff where I didn't record it or didn't have a photo of the screen when we got to places. So, I would probably be able to go back in the app and fill some of that out, but um, I don't know. Maybe I need to revisit apps and um, see what's cooking and what people like. But I have heard that Teslafy is a big one that a lot of people like, and I have not tried it, so maybe it's time I did. I'll let this get to the bottom in case anybody's looking at it and didn't see it before. That teal line is like averages or kind of some gathered data. But anyway, so that's yeah. I'm just looking at my notes here, and I think that's. I got one other thing. Let's see what time. Oh, it's already 11:05. Lithium battery is like. Oh, like to be charged at 75 degrees. Okay. Yeah, maybe I need to do a deep dive into non-stats guy does a deep dive into stats and apps and things like that, um, and gets more involved in that. Maybe I'd find it fascinating if I understood it better. I think I have another topic, but it's kind of off topic, and it's more about just like online attitudes about like the world is so screwed. Why does anything matter? That some people have, and they have it, in politics. If you assume everyone's corrupt, it doesn't matter if my guy's corrupt because you know everybody is. Yeah, it doesn't matter if I'm polluting because China's polluting a whole lot more. Um, you know, kind of I'm such a small drop in the bucket. It doesn't matter what I do mentality, and I see that in so many comments of not on my stuff, but on the Tesla articles or the electric or I saw something like that electric had posted, and the comments under it were like just amazingly bad. And I know electric has its own set of problems as far as some of the journalism there, but it was just like a Tesla Q party in the whole like comment section was just awful. But the whole thing is kind of like passing the buck of like something's not perfect, so we shouldn't move in that direction. And it doesn't matter if something's a little better or not. We shouldn't bother doing it because what does it matter anyway? But that little stuff adds up, and the little choices we make all add up, and hopefully, people are moving to EVs, like I said, faster than anyone expects. Hopefully, the companies can produce EVs well, faster than anyone expects, and we'll see. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and like I said at the very beginning, I think GM really lost a leadership position in not developing the EV1. Sorry for those of you who joined a little later. That was a long thing I'm not going to rehash, but you can go back and rewatch it if you want. But I think just there are a lot of people trying their best, and it's amazing how many people want to tear that down. I know it's not most people, but the assumptions of Teslas are too expensive, or it's not doing any good anywhere. Where does the electricity come from? As if there weren't easy ways to find that stuff out. But people don't want to. They want to assume nothing can be done. And it's all just a waste of time. But that's not how we advance. We got to make strides and do things. Even with like hydrogen, I don't think it's the future of passenger vehicles at all. But if somebody says they want to keep working on it and see if they can crack that nut, go for it. Maybe it won't work for passenger vehicles, but you might solve how it's going to work for ships or planes or zeppelins. Hey, could you put hydrogen in a zeppelin? Anyway, but yeah, just I'm glad that most of the people in the EV and Tesla community don't have that mentality where they're seeing like, yeah, we're not there yet, but we're there. There's hope and there's a reason to move forward and get our, you put our energies behind um, something that can hopefully make a difference when we all do it collectively together. So I guess that thing I wasn't going to get into, I did, but that's my little soapbox. Uh, Save the world, brotherhood of mankind and womankind. You know, little speech at the end, I guess. But uh, I just, yeah, I, I, I like being a part of trying to make something better, even if it's just a small little thing like buying a car. And, that's pretty cool. So I hope you guys all have a fantastic week. And I really appreciate you joining me. And um, Sunday's video, like I said, will be the end of the road trip. That part's going to be relatively fast. Nebraska is fine, but it's not that thrilling. Sioux City is Sioux City. And then the drive back, through Minnesota, we basically followed a storm the whole way. So that's going to be in there, and then I'm going to go over some of these stats in the spreadsheet there, and some of the big takeaways, things I would do differently, and some things that worked out pretty well. And then, yeah, maybe I guess I'll start having to plan another trip. I am thinking, for those of you who didn't catch it a couple weeks ago, the Bemidji Supercharger did open up, and that's online. And when the Grand Forks one opens and the Watertown one opens, I want to do a loop around Minnesota, hitting all the superchargers. And then either local people, or if people want to do that trek with me, which would be cool, or sections of the trek with me, it would be cool to do like group supercharger reviews. So like if you're from the area or know like Watertown or Great Falls, I might be getting that name wrong, or Bemidji. If you know these areas really well, you can do most of it, and then at the end, or we can go person to person and just say a little fact about it. I think that would be fun and an entertaining, kind of supercharger review, something a little different. Get more people involved. Maybe in the, why am I blanking on that name? So Great Falls or Grand Forks? Great Falls is in Montana. It's Grand Forks. Whew. Yeah, time to wrap this up. Yeah, I'll make that an event when those come online, because I think that would be super fun. And, for people watching Supercharger reviews, I think it would be more entertaining if there's more people. I wanted to do it when Alexandria opened, and I didn't have the guts to suggest it at the time, and I'm like, oh, nobody's going to want to do that. But I think people would find that fun, especially if we kind of make it a big grand tour around the state, and maybe draw more attention to it and say, hey, this is a thing that can be done easily in Minnesota, and in most other states too. So yeah, I think that would be a lot of fun. And then, I'm thinking, well, the middle chargers would kind of be left out, the Alexandrias and the Clearwater and uh, Baxter. Might feel a little left out if we just did the ring around the state. But maybe that would be a cool part of the video if people are joining at different times. We could have different dots of people like as they join the tour, or and what chargers they stopped at to get there. There could be kind of a fun animation piece, um, just showing a bunch of Teslas, kind of spider webbing the state. Um, that could be pretty cool. So yeah, I'll definitely make an event when that comes, and probably put it in the North Dakota, maybe South Dakota too. I'm not in that group, but if there is a group there, I could put it there, and then maybe even Wisconsin. Although there isn't too much right on the border, I don't know if they'd want to come over, but we could invite them, see what they want to do, or maybe we could challenge other states to do that. Um, Roland in North Dakota, it's going to be a little tough because you just have the line. But yeah, like you said, you got an RV app. What's the name of that? If you wouldn't mind putting it in the chat, because that would be a good one to know where some level 2 possibilities are. Um, but yeah, I think that would be a lot of fun. I think doing a drive where people could jump on and jump off at different places, and we could shoot some video together and just make it fun and silly and stupid, and maybe if we do it over a weekend or something, do it like maybe have some hotels to stop at or something. I don't know. This thing could get very big very fast, but I'll keep thinking about it, and if you guys have other ideas, feel free to let me know. Yeah, and with that, I am going to wrap up for the night. But thank you very much for joining me. Thanks for joining in the chat. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to stick them down in the comments down below. And have a great night. The awkward look over as I find the next tab I'm supposed to hit. But thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Have a great night, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks.